Go for it.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Thanks for carving out an extra 2 hours with us today to wrap up our conversation on the proposals for the low energy carbon code draft number 2. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off today. And we are at, I believe it's exactly 11 right now. So hopefully we'll have a couple more board members. Oh, 12. Cool. Hopefully a couple more folks join us. Our objective is to wrap up our discussion on all of the low energy and carbon code draft number 2 proposals from the board and give Adam and CEO team final direction for our final draft of the low energy carbon code that we'll be voting on starting next week. Our agenda will approve the meeting minutes from our meeting last week. We will have a brief executive session. You all in a minute or so will receive an email from me with a Zoom link to join the executive session. So when David breaks us for that, you can use that Zoom link to join. After the executive session, we'll come back together as a board and use the remaining time to discuss those outstanding proposals. I would love to save at least 2 minutes at the end to wrap up with you guys so you all know what's coming as far as our next steps for the voting meetings that will be happening next week. So without further ado, we can jump into the meeting today. I'd love to start with approving the meeting minutes from meeting 27.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Ron. All board members in favor of approving the meeting minutes from meeting 27, please say aye.
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 Awesome. Thank you all. Any board members opposed to approving the meeting minutes from meeting 27, please say nay. Okay. Meeting minutes from meeting 27 will be approved and posted on CEO's website. So David, I'm going to pass it over to you to kick us off in the executive session.
Thanks, Kim. Hi, everyone. I got an email from a member of the public last week with some questions about how the board is conducting itself with regards to open meetings laws and its voting. And I told that person that I would talk to you all in executive session to make clear to you all what your legal obligations are. So to that end, I would ask that we get a motion and a vote to enter executive session, at which time I'll read the whole script and we'll join the other link that Kim will share.
I'd like to motion we enter executive session for that purpose.
Second.
And then I guess I'd say all in favor. Can you raise your hand or?
Aye.
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 Thank you. And is anyone opposed to entering executive session? All right, hearing none, I'm just gonna.
I had raised my hand. I just think if it's open records, it should be open here, what we discussed. Thanks.
I'm sorry, who?
That was Kristen Sidonio.
Kristen, thanks, Kristen. So to be clear, we're authorized to go into executive session to talk about legal advice. So to specifically,
Yeah, I get that. I just voted opposed. But
no, that's
motion-
fine. I wasn't arguing with you. I'm reading. I'm continuing on with my script, I guess. So executive session has been voted on and is authorized pursuant to CRS 246402(3). For the board to go into executive session to receive legal advice concerning open meetings laws. And with that vote, I believe we can now go into executive session. So I think what we'll do is, Kim, will you help me out with the logistics here? Will we close this meeting and open the other meeting?
So this meeting will remain open, but we're going to ask all of you to log off this meeting. You all have an email in your inbox from me with a Zoom link for the executive session. So you'll log off of this meeting, you will join that meeting, and then when we reconvene back to this meeting, you will end the executive session Zoom call and rejoin the link you used to join today's session.
Thanks. I'll see you all over there.
Kevin, Andrew, and Kim, just so you know, we've moved to the executive session. So please, there's another link that Kim sent you via email to join that instead. So you can leave this meeting and join that link. And then when we're done with the executive session, you will rejoin this meeting.
Okay, thanks. I'm having a lot of technical issues, so I missed that part of the instructions.
Yeah, no problem.
That's funny, Ally and Josh. You're both Ally and Josh now.
Yeah, weird.
It was all about the hair. I have a Google Meets link and a Zoom link, so that's why I think it messes me up. So
Great. I think we're waiting for folks to trickle in. Kristen, maybe, or I'm sorry, Kim, let me know when you think we have everyone here.
Yeah, I think just one more minute, David. We got a couple folks missing. We do have 11. So Adam, I don't know, do we want to continue on and the other folks will trickle in?
Yeah, I think we can move forward, and if we don't see them jump in here in a minute, I'll just shoot folks an email.
Okay.
Great. So the board has concluded executive session. We're now back in open session. The discussion between the board and me, its counsel, was limited to privileged attorney-client communication about open meetings laws. And that communication was separately recorded. No decisions were made. And Kim, I'll turn it back over to you.
She's working with.
Thanks, David. That sounds great. All right. Oh, Adam, can you make me a host again, please? All righty. Okay, guys. So for the rest of our meeting today, we are going to continue on with our discussion for the proposals that board members submitted for the Low Energy Carbon Code draft number 2. And our goal today will be to get through all remaining board proposals and do our straw polling on each of them. So we will continue right where we left off at the last meeting. We have 3, 4, 5, 7 residential proposals left in our group 2. We'll move to group 3 proposals, which include residential and commercial proposals as well. But this is the order that we'll run in first. So Elizabeth, we ended on your proposal last time, and we will kick it back over to you to start us off today. And Elizabeth, I do have the second code language you proposed in an email to Adam and I on the next slide. So just feel free to let me know when to advance to that.
Yeah, so we introduced this last time where I was just looking for some clarification around how to set this target for the table because this is a building performance simulation, not a dwelling unit. The language here around each dwelling unit shall determine the required energy compliance doesn't really make sense because this is a building, not a dwelling unit model. So my first proposal here was the average dwelling unit size for the building should set that. Carolyn had some great points last time, so I came up with a second option here that instead says the required energy compliance shall be determined by calculating the average SE proposed, which is from that table in R405.2. So what that means is if you've got, 20 units that are 1,000 square feet and 1 unit that is 6,000 square feet, that it would determine or it would calculate then a higher savings target because of the impact of that one larger unit. And then I realized we also needed the second sentence here where it says dwelling units larger than 7,500 square feet have to be excluded from this pathway because right now the way that reads is they need to comply with the ERI pathway. So I like this second one better, especially based on Carolyn's feedback at the end of our meeting last time, because then the larger units do have an impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We'll take board questions, comments, or thoughts on either of these options.
I'll just say thanks, Elizabeth, for reworking it.
You bet. Yeah, your comment was right on.
So Carolyn, just to confirm that this satisfies your concern and you're good with this?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Seeing no other hands, I can move us on to our straw poll. So this question reads, does the board want to amend section R405.2 as proposed? Elizabeth, I'm happy to remove option 1 if you'd like that just off the table for this straw poll.
Yes, I'd like to remove option 1.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. So Yes. Option 2. Okay, awesome. So our poll today, option A is yes, you are in support of the option 2 proposal that we just reviewed from Elizabeth.
Can you
Option-
change B to say no instead of neither, seeing as there's not 2 options anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Option B is no, keep R45.2 the way it is, or option C is abstain. So board members in favor of option 1A, or excuse me, option A, please raise your hand. All right, I have 12 hands in support of option A. Thank you, guys. You can lower your hands. Board members in support of option B, please raise your hand. Okay, 0 votes for option B. Board members who would wish to abstain, please raise your hand. All right, I have 2 abstentions. Thank you all. You can lower your hands. So this passes the majority, and we will go ahead with this amendment. Thank you, everybody. Okay, Adam, this is over to you.
Great, thanks. So when we changed with the home size to add the 3rd tier of home size category, that extra large homes above 7,500 square feet, we didn't actually look at or consider whether or not to also give the same allowance from the next section in R406 that says you could, if you use heat pumps for space heating and water heating, that you can get you could have a higher ERA score of up to 5 points higher. That is true for the small home category and the large home category, but we didn't do anything for the extra large. And so I just wanted to throw this out as an opportunity for discussion as to whether or not we want the extra large homes to be able to have a higher ERI score if they use all electric heating and water heating equipment. So just putting this out there for discussion, and we're offering it as a means of consistency, but would be open to discussion here.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, feel free if board members have thoughts to raise your hand. Andrew, we'll start with you.
If this is good here, why would that not be good everywhere, or is it everywhere? I didn't think it was.
It is everywhere. So Andrew, the small home and the large home would be able to already take advantage of it. The extra large home we just didn't add as being able to take advantage of it. So
okay,
if you agree to this, it would be applicable to all home sizes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Adam. Kim?
So am I understanding correctly that this would allow, so currently an extra large home needs to reach net 0 energy, which means a 0 ERI score, correct?
Correct. So this would just be changing, and I guess maybe that's good clarification in this language, that it would only be changing the efficiency target. So the 42s that are in code right now, you'd still have to hit 0.
Gotcha. So it change it from 42 to 47 for the efficiency score that's required.
Correct.
Any other board thoughts, comments, questions? Okay, oh, yeah, Kim, go for it.
I guess I'm just trying to think in practicality of how that would work from a score standpoint. I like the idea of making creating consistency.
That they have to get a 47 rather than a 42.
Yeah, I'm guessing. What do you mean by practicality, Kim? Can you say more on that?
Meaning what that so in using a heat pump already improves their score from an efficiency standpoint.
So I think you're essentially allowing them to use heat pumps to trade off at some level for some of the other efficiency that they might have had to do if they were not using heat pumps. But I think, so I guess the answer to your question is if a project was already planning to use heat pumps, then they could potentially get a little bit of an extra advantage here. But that's kind of, I mean, that would be true across the board when we were allowing it for the other pathways as well. Is it's encouraging the use of heat pumps, but also it does give you the benefit if you were already going to use heat pumps anyway. And that's really kind of hard to avoid because you can't, there's no way in code to say, well, if you were going to do this anyway, you don't get the benefit, right? Because there's no way to prove whether they would have or not. So I think that it's either you allow the benefit for those projects that use the heat pumps and heat pump water heaters, or you don't.
Gotcha. And it's already in code for all the other sizes, so it makes sense to make it consistent. Okay,
Right.
just clarifying. Thank you.
Thanks,
But I
Kim.
do think, is there any clarification that needs to be added in order to make sure that those 5 points get applied to the 42 score versus the net zero?
Yeah, maybe when we get to that point, we could add a little bit when we get right up to voting, or Kim, if you want to do it now, we could say something along the lines of for the pre-OPP score only.
Sounds good. I can work on that, but I don't want to delay other comments. So Andrew, we'll go to you and then we'll go to Carolyn.
Yeah, Adam, another question. The 80% that's in here, was there not the draft to modify the 80%, or is that still coming?
That's going to be, I think, right after this one.
And I thought there was a separate effort by the state to actually lower that number substantially based upon all the existing homes.
The percentage of capacity that it must cover.
Yes, is that not true?
I'm not tuned into that specific proposal or change at the state policy level. That probably has something to do, if there is an effort on that, that probably has something to do with the incentives. And so that's a separate issue here. And Andrew, frankly, if we consider the next proposal and agree to the next proposal, then it's not an issue anyway.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're welcome to raise your concerns when we talk about that proposal.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, Carolyn.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that here and in the other place, when we are referring to a electric heat pump, we're inclusive of ground source systems.
I
So
believe
we just make sure that that's clear in the final code writing, Kim.
Yeah, I think we say, yeah, in other sections, we can revisit that, Carolyn, after the next proposal, because I think it might be clearer after the next one anyway.
Yeah, I think it's just a note for like checking definitions or something, just to make sure that whenever we're allowing this extra points, we're inclusive of both air and ground source systems.
For sure, yeah. Definitely wouldn't want to exclude ground source. They're even better. So,
well, I think it's the only way these 7,500 square foot homes are going to hit the code. So,
right.
Thanks, Carolyn. Adam, just looking at the language on the slide, is that okay?
Can we put the for the pre-OPP score only after the of appendix RC, just because I feel like that weirdly splits it otherwise?
Absolutely. Here we go. Okay, never mind. Doesn't want to paste. For the pre score only. You look good? Cool. Okay, awesome. Seeing no other hands from board members, we can move to our proposal, our straw poll, excuse me. Does the board want to amend section R406.5.1 as proposed? Option A is yes, option B is no, option C is abstain. Board members in favor of option A, please raise your hand. Okay, I have 14 hands for option A. Thank you guys. Oh, and I think actually I saw 15 pop in there. Thank you guys. You can keep your hands lowered. Board members voting for option B, please raise your hand. Okay, 0 votes for option B. Board members wishing to abstain, please raise your hand. Okay, 0 abstentions. Proposal 31 passes. And Adam, I will turn it back over to you for proposal 33.
Oh, so the other one, I guess, is in the last category. So we'll talk about it later. The one
I
Andrew,
was
you
gonna
were
say, I think we
asking about.
moved
Yeah.
that one down, Adam, but I'm
Yeah.
happy to, if you'd rather us jump down to that, we can, or keep going.
Why don't we just jump down to it now, just since we're on the topic and it's easier to discuss concurrently.
That is
Um,
fine. Here it is.
So the other proposal was relating to a public comments that were submitted that said essentially that our criteria for the encouraging electrification elements of this code between the simulated performance pathway and the ERI pathway were substantially different, and that the simulated performance pathway was pretty straightforward in just saying, if you don't use any combustion equipment for space heating or surface water heating, then you get the benefit. If you do, then you don't. And the public comments were very specifically addressing that this more complex set of requirements that had been in the ERI pathway require a lot more calculation, load calculations, and other kinds of more complicated work to be done that oftentimes doesn't happen until later in the design process, like when the mechanical loads are being, mechanical systems are being designed. And so there was some concern that if you have to do all those calculations before they would normally be done in the design process, then a developer may not know whether they are able to hit that higher ERI target or not until much later in the design process. And then obviously that throws everything else into confusion. And so the public comment was really trying to make the language of this section more similar to that simulated performance pathway language, both for consistency, but also to make sure that it's a lot easier for designers to know whether or not they are able to take advantage of the higher ERI scores or not. So that's where this proposal came from. And I think it still achieves the goal that we're trying to achieve and makes it a lot simpler. So that's where this is coming from.
Thanks, Adam. Board member comments, thoughts, or questions? Elizabeth, we'll start with you.
I just want to say I think this is a great proposal and I like it a lot. I think it will make it will help accomplish the goal and also make it more friendly for design teams.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Carolyn?
Clarifying question of how we treat something like a decorative gas fireplace or, small gas fireplace in the context of this provision.
It's a good question. I think in these provisions, generally, when we're talking about space heating, it's like primary space heating. So like a gas fireplace is just decorative if it's not meant to be for the purpose of providing space heating and it's just for a decorative purpose, then it's not like you wouldn't be penalized under this provision if you had that, as long as you had heat pumps for heating.
Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks, Adam. Kim?
I like this proposal as well. And just to kind of further answer Carolyn's question, in doing building modeling, the decorative or fireplaces that are intended for 5% or less of heating are not required to be included in the model. So just from a modeling standpoint, it's not standard to include those it's not required.
Thanks, Kim. All right. Any other board comments, questions, or thoughts? Okay, seeing no hands, we can move along to our straw poll. Does the board want to modify section R46.5.1 as proposed? Option A is yes, option B is no, option C is abstain. Board members voting option A in support, please raise your hand. Okay, I've got 15 hands for option A. Thank you, guys. You can lower your hands. Board members voting for option B, no, please raise your hand. Okay, we've got 0 votes for option B. Board members wishing to abstain, please raise your hand. All right, I've got 0 abstentions. Wonderful. So this proposal passes, and I'm going to jump back up into the order of the slides as we had them. So Adam, this one will go right back to you for proposal 33.
Great. So the crux of this proposal really is, I know we had a long discussion about changing in the R408.2.6 additional credits. There's a table that said how efficient your appliances have to be for refrigerators, dishwashers, clothes dryers, and clothes washers. And we had a long discussion, and I believe Kim Wheels had submitted a proposal about changing this to be based on Energy Star instead of based on specific efficiency criteria. I'm guessing most of you have all seen the news by now that the Energy Star program is in pretty significant peril at the moment, and there's a very high degree of likelihood that the program could be eliminated entirely. It may not happen, but it might. And I think our concern was just having a requirement that these be tied to a specific certification under Energy Star that may or may not exist in the future. And so just wanted to raise this as a concern. And our proposal was to revert this back just to the language that the IECC had, although I am very open to the idea that others are going to have other opportunities or other considerations to think about here. But just wanted to put this out there for discussion, given where Energy Star seems to potentially be headed right now. So, Kevin, I can just turn it over to you if you want to start.
Apologies, I was left up from before.
All right, Carolyn, then it's up to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this. I'm wondering about the option to still keep the Energy Star language and have an or. So whichever provision is most relevant, simply because while Energy Star is in existence, it's a simplified way of verifying something meets the requirements. Whereas in the absence of it, you have to go and look at, spec sheets and other things. So, rather than crossing it out, say, or with a maximum energy consumption, not greater than, as an example.
Yeah, I'm very open to OR, and there's also other certification metrics. And I think Kristen's going to speak up about the Consortium for Energy Efficiencies metrics as well. So Kristen, go ahead.
Yeah, so having been the Energy Star appliance manager back in the day, I'm fairly familiar with Energy Star specifications, and I want to second Carolyn's proposal that we leave the existing language about Energy Star, because Energy Star has weathered challenges in the past, and I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Energy Star is going to go away. Granted, it may take a different iteration, perhaps it may be privatized in the future, but I do think that for simplicity and enforceability's sake, it's really important to have a simple way for people to look up compliance. The second option that I was going to put forward was to say the or be aligned with the Consortium for Energy Efficiency, or CEE Tier 1. That is, as of today, aligned with Energy Star, and they have qualified product lists. So it is not as easy as looking up whether something has Energy Star or not. But it is a way that an official could look up whether something did comply or not. So as a third option, I would also support the backstop language that has been proposed by Adam here, but I would note that that is not currently consistent with what Energy Star is. Energy Star has different criteria for every product category. It's not true that every refrigerator that uses less than 620 kilowatt hours a year earns the Energy Star. It depends on the type of refrigerator and the configuration. This is, as a backstop, I guess we could just do absolute kilowatt hour. But I would very much prefer to see Energy Star or CEE, or as an absolute backstop, the language that's being proposed here. Thanks.
Thanks, Kristen. And I'm just making that one proposed change, and I can happy Adam to adapt as we go through. But Kim, and then we'll go around.
Great, thanks. That was really helpful input from Kristen. I believe kind of the intent, and when I brought it forward, it was to address a public comment and suggestion to ensure that what we are incentivizing here with code is better than what would or could be installed as federal minimum standards anyway. And so to me, it makes sense maybe to have Energy Star or the organization that Kristen quoted that Energy Star is based on. Because I agree, even if this administration is to quote unquote do away with Energy Star, there's still appliances out there that are labeled Energy Star. It could come back with the next administration, and it still holds meaning out there in the industry. So, as well as for consumers.
For the public record, Consortium for Energy Efficiency, or CEE, and their tier 1 rating for appliances, equipment, and products is based on Energy Star, not vice versa.
Thank you, Kristen. Thanks for clarifying.
Oh, Ron, go for it.
I guess I'm a little bit hesitant to just put in an energy consumption rating, because the Energy Star testing has a whole bunch of performance standards that are accounted for. So I think, as sort of was mentioned earlier, it's not a straight equivalency between just flat out energy consumption and what it takes to get the Energy Star certification. So I'm hesitant. I'm wondering if we couldn't add an Energy Star or equivalent as the way to manage the language, because I remember we talked about what happens if Energy Star went away during the first Trump administration. There was talk about that, and there was a bunch of folks who were trying to figure out how we would manage so many different pieces and parts of energy ratings for residential construction. And there was a group that was trying to come up with essentially a way to establish equivalency. So I guess it's sort of a catch-all, and it would leave quite a bit of work to figure out what that equivalency, how you establish that and provide evidence of it. But I think maybe the simplest thing for our purposes today would be just to say Energy Star or equivalent.
I think my only hesitation, Ron, about the or equivalent is to the point you just made about it could probably take quite a bit of work to establish what's equivalent. And I think the whole purpose here is to try to make it that it's very easy to establish what you can and can't do. So
that's why Energy Star should stay, right?
Well,
I mean, this
is completely agree. And
right.
I agree with what everyone has said here about keeping Energy Star as an option. I personally like the option of Energy Star or CEE, just because I think CEE will continue whether Energy Star does or not, unless Kristen, feel free to say that that's a crazy assumption.
No, I think that's a good assumption. And I tried to drop in a chat for everyone, including the public, the link to the CEE1.org website. You can navigate there yourself if you don't have this link. It's Consortium for Energy Efficiency, just CEE1.org. And then under their program resources, they have a helpful visual that shows their tiers and how they're aligned with Energy Star. So to the point that was just raised, they literally are. If we're going to say or equivalent, this is the equivalent. So,
and do they have all the product categories that we might need to look at?
All the important ones, yeah.
Carolyn, I see your hand. I'll jump over to you.
Yeah, so it also occurred to me that just because Energy Star goes away, it does not eliminate the most recent Energy Star. Like
it doesn't eliminate this.
The last Energy Star is still in place, or still exists. The standard exists. So perhaps the compromise is Energy Star, CEE, or equivalent, so that it's all three. If one of the first two exists, that's the easiest to use, and if not, to Ron's point, there's at least an equivalency that can be used when necessary. Would that be a reasonable compromise?
The question
I can live with that.
I agree with that, but who defines equivalent? Are we leaving this up to AHJ, or are we going to say equivalent as defined by Colorado Energy Office?
I'd like to leave it as the Colorado Energy Office. I think it'd be useful to have, you know, a statewide method of navigating the loss of Energy Star.
Yeah, to be quite honest with you, Ron, I don't know that I can commit the energy office on my own to, because that's I think a pretty significant undertaking, and I agree with you that there's value in having that, and I would not be surprised if the energy office does do something in that vein should Energy Star go away, but I just don't know that I can say yes, the energy office can absolutely do that right here.
You know,
So
I'm not suggesting that you would need to, you know, look at it appliance by appliance, but if nothing else, maybe create some more nuanced guidelines that AHJs could use to make their determination. So it would probably have to be, you know, this product category, this, you know, because I think about like refrigerators, right? And there's different standards depending upon the size of the refrigerator, how much energy it's allowed. And so you could come up with a template or a chart that an AHA could use and say, okay, here's what you have to do. So I wouldn't be asking the Energy Office to reproduce the entire Energy Star certification process, but really just provide some guidance that the AHAs can follow.
yeah, and I can certainly take that back. I'm comfortable with putting the words equivalent in here, and then we will do what we're able to do, because at the end of the day, we're still putting Energy Star and CEE first and saying, hopefully you will. I think most of the developers will choose one of those anyway, because it's much easier than trying to demonstrate equivalency, right?
Yeah.
But I think the equivalent, if I'm understanding correctly, is more of like backstop. It's just like, just in case one of these two things is not viable,
right?
Here's your backstop option, and I'm comfortable with that. Carolyn.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to get to the mute button.
Kim, if you want to just do it on that first line right there, and we can just vote that it will be consistent across all of the lines, so you don't have to type that all out right now and waste time on that.
That'd be great. Okay, so does this first line for refrigerator look good for everybody? I mean, I can take the link out. I just wanted to make sure that folks saw it. So I will.
And just for just for awareness too, I think with equivalent, we'll come up with some wording that doesn't just say literally the word equivalent there, but we can deal with that where it will say something to the effect of equivalent.
Cool. Okay. Give everyone a moment to look at that. I think we've talked about it quite a bit, so I'm going to jump down to our straw poll as proposed in update 2 refrigerator line item, just to make sure we are all clear on exactly what we are voting on. So does the board want to
Can you maybe put in parentheses but next to that for all appliances, just so it's clear that we're not only talking about the refrigerator line?
Yes. Okay. Does the board want to change the appliance efficiency requirements in table R408.2.6 as proposed in the update to refrigerator line item applied to all appliances? Option A is yes in support, option B is no against, and option C is abstain. So board members in support of option A, please raise your hand. All right, I've got 15 hands for option A. Thank you guys. You can lower your hands. Board members who would like to vote for option B, please raise your hand. 0 hands for option B. Board members who would like to abstain, please raise your hand. Okay, I have 0 abstentions. Thanks, Adam. This proposal passes. And Dan, you are up next with your proposal for our 405.1, excuse me, 403. Oh my gosh, it's Monday. I'll just turn it over to you, Dan.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, this is a proposal for our 409.3.1 and our 409.4.1. The term major renovations is not defined anywhere that I could find. So my original proposal was to use the language that actually replaced the substantial improvements in section R 503.1.5, which I understand now Tim has, I believe, a proposal to change it back. But I was going to use that same wording, which is to change it to additions and alterations where the work area is 50% or more of the gross floor area of the dwelling unit. And proposing that for both sections just to make it consistent.
Thank you, Dan. Board member comments, questions, thoughts? Feel free to raise your hand. Adam, I'll start with you.
I'm not advocating one way or the other on this proposal. Just wanted to remind everyone that the reason that major renovations was not defined was an intentional board decision, and it was intended to allow each jurisdiction to determine at what threshold they wanted renovations to trigger these requirements in existing buildings. So I just wanted to remind everyone that we did have a pretty extensive conversation on this during the first process, and that also Tim might mention that, you know, the jurisdictions that have already adopted these requirements have set that threshold, and I can say that they are different in different jurisdictions. And so just noting that if this change happens, jurisdictions who have already set that requirement will have to revert to this if this is adopted. So again, not saying pro or con, just wanted everyone to have that context.
Thanks, Adam. Tim?
Yeah, thank you. I do have a proposal coming up. And essentially, with this proposal, you know, I agree, Adam helped me out with my memory from many years ago or so. But with that being said, the adding this language in the body of the code, and I'll go over this in my next, whenever that proposal comes up, is, in my opinion, is making the code more restrictive, which the board is not able to do. And the reason is that when you look at the definition of the substantial improvements, the actual definition, not necessarily in our 40503, in the body of the code, it talks about based on the value of the house with land, et cetera, and the same thing with commercial. But so I don't think that this should be and is legally able to be put into the code. That's
Jim, I'll just jump in there really quick. So just a reminder for folks that the electric, solar, and EV ready language that we are adding into the code is not subject to that strengthening, weakening, because the statute gives us the opportunity to modify it as we see fit. So this would be legally allowed because it is not under that same limitation as all of the other provisions of the IECCR. So just, Tim, when you talk about it in your C50 or R503 context, it's different than in this context because these are the electric, solar, and EV ready provisions, and we do have the authority to modify those as we'd like.
Very good. Thank you for the clarification.
Thanks, guys. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I was just going to chime in with a similar theme. I know there are jurisdictions like Denver, for example, as they are looking at different code considerations around existing buildings when it comes to renovations, how to specifically define that. So I would prefer to leave that a little more open and vague for those purposes. Like, for example, you know, whether you are introducing new equipment in your major renovation versus using existing equipment. There's just a lot of ramifications to some of those decisions, especially when it comes to efficiency requirements. So I would prefer to leave that to the jurisdiction and their standards. Thanks.
Thanks, Elizabeth. We'll go Tim and then Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I was going to add one more comment. With the 50% threshold or more, just for the board, I'm sure everybody would know when that would kick in if you did a full basement finish on an existing home. And that was a complete, you know, stacked, same footprint, low and above, then that would kick this in. So I know Broomfield, I put in the 75% threshold on a alteration in the house, but I chose to do that just because of the major renovation or major alteration. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Andrew?
I kind of like a concept of having a backstop. I've heard board member or two say, if not now, when are we ever going to get around to forcing some of this to be introduced into the existing home stock, which I thought was a little too extreme to burden existing homeowners with unforeseen costs that they may not have contemplated or anticipated. I kind of like the concept of having a backstop. Maybe 50% isn't the right number. Maybe what Tim said, he intentionally picked 75, but to leave it to each jurisdiction, I don't know what each jurisdiction has done. I wouldn't mind seeing a tabulation of what each jurisdiction has done. But separate from that, I think something is necessary. Because I think a couple persons on the board almost wanted to overreach in this area, which I was strongly against. And this is still a serious topic. But thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Carolyn?
Yeah, on this topic of renovations, I think because these are the electric ready provisions, I think it needs the additional triggering component of where that renovation includes new appliances and or relocation of existing appliances. So it's less about the square footage and more about like, I don't care if somebody finishes a basement if they're using the same furnace, water heater, and everything else. Like, I don't know that our intent is for them to have to then go add electric receptacles at the existing furnace, water heater, etc. So just thinking about what we're, what is it, the square footage, or is it the thing that's happening as part of the renovation that's of importance here?
Thanks, Carolyn. Kim?
I guess this is a question for Tim, but I'm recalling our previous discussion long ago on this, and it's my recollection that most jurisdictions already have a definition for substantial improvements, or that they're used to defining that. And so if that is true, then I'm in support of leaving it as we have it and not trying to define it for them.
Thanks, Kim. I can offer some context because Lotus actually recently looked into this for the city of Aspen. A lot of jurisdictions across the state who adopted electric readiness codes, and I'd be happy to follow up with more information, adopted electric readiness before the state minimum, and so therefore have not defined major renovations, nor do they have that language kind of within their code. They just use the in some cases, they don't apply electric readiness to existing buildings. In other cases, they do. For those who have adopted the state minimum code, it's across the board how folks have defined it. There's really not consistency. You have Routt County, who has said it's a full scrape and rebuild is what a major renovation is, and separately you have Tim's jurisdiction, who set the threshold at 75% work area. So there is no consistency, and we have seen jurisdictions take their own definition for those who adopted the state code and run with it. So I'm happy to follow up with more information, but a brief look at what I collected last week for my research, there's not a consistent way, and some folks go all the way and some folks, don't go that far in defining it. So, okay, I'm seeing no other board member hands. Dan, any final thoughts from you? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess after hearing all of this and definitely being in support of flexibility, I'm wondering if I can actually withdraw the proposal.
Yes, absolutely. You're welcome to withdraw.
That I'd like to do that.
Okay, thanks, Dan. All right, so proposal 36 will be withdrawn, and we will not straw poll on it. Thanks for the discussion in the comments, and thanks, Dan, for bringing forward that proposal. All right, Adam, I am going to turn it over to you for proposal 37.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. So in a previous meeting, I believe it was between drafts 1 and 2, there were some exceptions added. And Kim, I think if you want to scroll to the next slide, that'll be more helpful. Exceptions added to both EV capable light and EV capable spaces that read as that struck out text reads on the screen there. And My concern with that is that by having the exact same exception applied to both EV capable light and EV capable spaces, we are essentially turning EV capable light and EV capable spaces into the same category type. And I don't think that that was the intent. The whole purpose of creating an EV capable light space was to have it be different than EV capable, have it be one step lower when it comes to the infrastructure requirements. And I was concerned by the fact that by allowing this exception in EV capable, we are essentially undoing that difference that we had done previously. So the proposal still leaves this exception remaining in EV capable light spaces, but it would strike it out here so that it is still clear that there is some sort of electrical capacity, electrical distribution requirement for EV capable spaces, which is also, just to be really clear, consistent with how EV capable is defined and used across the country. So I think both for the fact that we don't want to combine those spaces into one type when we had intentionally created two, but we also don't want Colorado's building code to suddenly be way out of step with how everyone else across the country treats EV capable. And so for those reasons, I'm proposing striking the exception only to the EV capable space categories in both commercial and residential.
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, board member comments, thoughts, questions. Tim, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was a board member who proposed, and I think just for a typo, it looks like that second R409.5.3.3 should say EV capable light.
No, because there's EV capable spaces in both commercial and residential. Okay. So these are the EV capable.
Oh, I see and see. Okay.
Yep.
You're right. I'm sorry. I just want to say a couple of examples with two different projects that I've worked on and am working on with the impact of the requirement for having the capacity. I've got a project with a large parking area for a multi-building project up on the north side of Broomfield, and it's going to require 115 EV capable spaces. And my electrical inspector figured out that just those alone would need 3,320 amp service, which would equate to 345 breakers. That's a pretty big economic impact for a future permit that'll come in eventually to do transfer those or create those to be EV installed. And that's why I thought this was a good exception to be brought in. And another smaller project that needs 30 EV capable spaces, which means you'd have to have an 830 amp service and 87 breakers. So you'd have to put that adjacent to the existing service. In any case, I just want to throw some examples out there of the economic impact. And those two particular projects that are in my process, like plan review process, it is an impact from these developers, especially for providing the future service capability on the building as they build it. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Carolyn?
Yeah, just one note to Tim to make sure that they're calculating it based on required parking spaces and not all parking spaces being provided based on whatever your land use code is. What occurred to me is I like the pull string from the termination, and I'm just wondering if we want to move that up into the definition. So a continuous raceway and or conduit shall be installed with a pull string from the termination location at the parking spaces. So.
Thanks, Carolyn. Adam, do you have thoughts?
I'm fine with doing that. I don't feel strongly about that part one way or the other. I think the concern was that
I definitely support you fixing the other problems. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Tim, I think to what you were saying is, I mean, the truth is that we've acknowledged, and I think everyone is aware that EV readiness as a whole topic is an economic impact on projects. But I think we also are recognizing that it is an economic impact today that is offsetting a much more significant economic impact when those chargers are installed. And I think we have to be realistic about the fact that state projections show a high penetration of EVs in the next 10 to 20 years across Colorado. We are already one of the largest We actually have, we are the highest state for adoption of EVs in the country right now per capita. And you know, you drive around any of our roads now and there are EVs all over the place, and we anticipate that there will be a very high penetration of those. And so, yes, it is an economic impact, and we acknowledge that. But when those parking lots are going to have to retrofit to put in more chargers later, if they're not providing a lot of that infrastructure now, the cost is going to be, as a lot of estimates have shown, anywhere from 4 to 10 times what they're paying today to do that infrastructure. So I think we at the Energy Office are very confident that those spaces will be used at some point for charging, and we are doing it at a much lower cost by implementing it through new construction. And so I think it is important that we are still, one, differentiating between EV capable and EV capable light, which is part of the compromise, was that a lot of the EV capable light spaces don't have to have that. And those spaces will be more costly to retrofit in the future. But we want to make sure some of those spaces are still having that capacity that will be needed so that they're much easier to retrofit in the nearer future.
Thanks, Adam. And did you want me to try to make that change from Carolyn, or I need direction from you on that piece?
I'm comfortable with that. If you want to take a continuous raceway and or conduit with a pulse, basically take the with a pull string from termination location at parking spaces, and then to be installed, like just put it in there after conduit in that first paragraph is my guess, Carolyn, right?
Yes, sorry, shaking my head, it's not helpful.
All right, I will work on that. And Tim, I see your hand, so we'll go to you.
Yeah, thanks. Just a short rebuttal to those comments, Adam, and then I'll be done. Yeah, I fully agree that I'm not going to argue with the projections of where the state's going with the number of EVs. But I would just like to remind everybody that requiring another or a larger transformer on the building that's being built for the future versus a permit and then we're going to get a permit anyway to do the new EV spaces, converting them into EV installed. Our process that we've done already has been being able to have the electrical contractor provide new transformer and new service. Just did 4 different EV parking batches of parking spaces in our existing city buildings over the last year. And that's all part of that permit process. So when you have the conduits with pull strings run all ready to an area that the developer has worked with the utility provider, in my case, whether it's Xcel or United Power, to an area where they have the adequate facility with the easements to be able to put that transformer in a service pedestal to handle that, makes total sense in terms of not creating a huge economic impact to deal with that permit. But that's just, I've got 4 projects that I'm working through and I'm already agreeing to that as an alternate. Neither here nor there, but those are my comments just from a general all across the state. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Okay, Adam, if this language looks good, I think we can move forward with our straw poll. All right, so straw poll for proposal 37. Does the board want to delete the exception for EV capable spaces as proposed? I might just say is this okay, Adam, or do you want me to change this language?
Just say delete the exception for EV capable spaces and add the pull string language.
Cool, thank you. Okay, option A is yes, board members are in support of this proposal. Option B is no, they are not. And option C is abstain. Board members voting for option A, please raise your hand. Okay, I have 9 hands for option A. Thank you, guys. You can lower your hands. Board members in support of option B, please raise your hand. All right. I have 4 board members voting for option B. Thank you, guys. You can lower your hands. Any board members wishing to abstain, please raise your hand.
Hey, Kim, real quick, I think Aaron voted no. Is that what you were about to say, Aaron?
Aaron, I
Yeah.
captured you as a no vote.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
But
And
I
then
think
Chris-
there were 5 no's at one point in time.
I think that's right. Yeah. With
Yeah.
with Aaron, it was 5 no's, Kim.
Okay. Thank you guys for catching that. The hands go up and go down pretty quick. And Kristen, just confirming you were an abstain.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Just making sure I had those votes correct. So that's 9 votes in support, 5 votes against and 1 abstention. So that passes the simple majority straw poll. And we will move forward with this proposal. Before we move on, I just want to remind folks that this is our very last meeting to discuss proposals. We still have quite a few to get through and only about 40 minutes left to do so. So please say it in a headline, be brief in your comments. If it doesn't need to be said, I would ask that you do not say it, so we make sure that we give all of our board members the space to share their proposals and make sure we get through as much as we can in this meeting. So just wanted to remind everybody of that. And Tim, with that, I will pass it over to you for proposal 39.
Good deal. No comment needed. The red is what I'm asking to put in to clarify.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Did anyone have any questions, comments on this proposal for Tim? Seeing no hands, we can go straight to the straw poll. Does the board want to amend the new exception to section R405? Oh my gosh, R503.1.1 as proposed? Option A is yes, option B is no, option C is abstain. Board members in favor of option A, please raise your hand. Okay. Your hands up if you are voting yes, please. All right, that is 15 hands for option A. Thank you, guys. You can lower your hands. Board members in support of, or excuse me, voting for option B, please raise your hand. Okay, 0 votes for option B. Board members wishing to abstain, please raise your hand. Okay, 0 abstentions. Thank you, Tim. That was easy. All righty, so we're going to move on to our final group 3 of proposals. We'll start with residential, we'll move to commercial, and then we'll end with definitions. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 proposals that we're going to work our way through on the residential side. So Dan, first proposal is for you. Pass it in your court.
Thanks. Yeah, it looked like item 10 in the requirements, excuse me, requirements listed in R105.2.2 was identical to, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. Item 10 appears to be identical to the requirements, so I wasn't quite sure what the difference was there in R105.2.2.
I'll just note that there really is no difference. Hope also flagged this as something that was just redundant. And I think I feel comfortable taking this out because it is captured in another section in R105. Because there were solar ready requirements in the base code originally for the 2024, and the ICC did not. That was part of when the solar ready requirements were removed, that cleanup did not happen. So they're still in there and we can still use them.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Adam. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing no hands. We can move to our straw poll. Would the board like to remove section 105.2, item number 10? Option A is yes, option B is no, and option C is abstain. Board members in support of option A, please raise your hand. Okay. Thank you. I see 16 hands for option A. You guys can lower your hands. Board members voting option B, no, please raise your hand. 0 option, or excuse me, so that's 0 votes for option B, and any board members wishing to abstain, please raise your hand. All right, that's 0 abstentions. Thanks, Dan. That was another easy one. All right, Adam, back to you.
Can you go to the language just so I can remember I remember this one. So this was a public comment that was submitted. I think a few people submitted this public comment. The board had agreed to require that insulation be installed at a grade 1 insulation level. And then we had added this exception that says if you're following one of the performance pathways, you don't have to necessarily install it well. And there were some public comments that were saying the code should never be encouraging subpar installation of insulation. Obviously, modeling should and will account for subpar installation of insulation. You know, ratings will, like if you're doing the rating at the end of the day, it will account for that, but that the code should not be encouraging or allowing for that. And so that was just, this is in response to some public comments. And I know Kim Wheels also had a comment or a proposal that was similar. So just Kim, I want to give you an opportunity to say anything if you wanted to.
Yeah, Kim, jump in.
Sorry, now I'm unmuted. I'll just chime in that my proposal was to add a requirement for if you were following those sections, then you had to account for and qualify that installation as not grade 1, which is required for a HERS rater, at least for that path of code compliance anyway. However, what I just learned in training this week, we hosted a building workshop code training, and I learned that ResNet is working to remove the grade 1, 2, and 3 different criteria from their protocols, and to instead switch over to a pass or fail, which is essentially what a code should do. So I removed my proposal in support of what Adam submitted for that reason.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, all right, board member comments, questions for Adam and Kim. Andrew, we'll start with you.
I'm for keeping the exception. I was against requiring or mandating grade 1 because grade 2 in of itself states minor gaps and compressions may exist between 2% and less than 10%, which many days ago, probably people would have thought that was grade 1. So to require a pass-fail for grade 1, I'm not sure if is the jurisdiction going to do that, or is the jurisdiction going to require a rater to do that? And is that just going to force the ERI path, which really isn't supposed to be a prescriptive mandate? So the more prescriptive stuff, or the more stuff that comes into prescriptive that is in the ERI, it just doesn't feel appropriate to force this as much as we are forcing it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing no hands. I will move us on to the straw poll. Would the board like to remove the exception to R402.5.1.1? Option A is yes, option B is no, option C is abstain. Board members voting for option A, please raise your hand. Keep your hands up. All right, thank you. That's 13 hands for option A. You guys can lower your hands. Board members voting for option B, please raise your hand. Okay, we have one vote for option B. Thank you. You can lower your hand. And board members wishing to abstain, please raise your hand. Okay, 2 abstentions. Thank you, guys. You can lower your hands. So this proposal passes by majority. Thank you, guys. We will continue on. And we just did, we did proposal 32 a bit earlier in the meeting, so we'll skip through that one. And Tim, we will pass it over to you. I think the next 2 proposals are for your 2 proposals in R408.
All right, thank you. Just before I start this, I just want to make sure I made the assumption that this is an optional credit from going back through the way the code reading.
This is an optional credit.
That's
yes.
correct.
So,
yes.
All right, thank you. Just wanted to make sure. So my proposal is to delete this. I like the concept. I know we had some discussion back and forth with what that should look like in terms of what language we use, et cetera, et cetera. And I kind of helped propose to bring that language in, but based on it being an optional credit, I can't find anything that would show that doing this saves energy. So I don't think it needs to be in the energy code, which is the energy efficiency code. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And any board members, comments, questions for Tim on this one? Okay. Oh, there we go. All right, Carolyn.
Yeah, I mean, I guess its principal, if I understand it correctly, its principal role is in reducing light pollution. So, I mean, there is at least a net benefit. I agree with you. It's not necessarily an energy savings, but it's a pollution reduction measure.
Thanks, Carolyn. Yeah, Elizabeth, and then Ron.
There's sort of some indirect energy savings here because the light that is not backlit, uplit, and glare causing is no longer wasted light. So the light fixtures that meet these requirements do tend to have a better efficacy, meaning higher lumens per watt because there's no wasted light. So it's difficult to quantify, but there are some energy savings associated with this rating.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Ron?
As we move to using lighting fixtures that are LED based, which is the result of energy efficiency requirements, the designers are coming up with all sorts of unusual and atypical fixtures. And some of those fixtures have really bad problems when it comes to light pollution. And so while we're encouraging these innovative fixtures, we want to make sure we don't also encourage the unhelpful side effects of those fixtures and make sure they're selected towards fixtures that work from an overall environmental perspective. So I think we kind of need something in there to prevent the unintended consequences of these really decorative LED fixtures that might be used for energy efficiency purposes.
Thanks, Ron. Kim?
I'll just chime in that I think, especially as homes get larger, that there are more and more of those exterior lighting types of things. And we have a lot of the state that is rural, or in some areas are working toward night sky compliance. And this definitely supports us continuing to be a very nature-friendly state. Not this proposal, but keeping the language in supports that. So I'm in support of keeping the credit available.
Thanks, Kim. Elizabeth?
Yeah, and just to chime again, well, I think you're absolutely right there. The question is about, are there energy savings associated with this? And I would say that there absolutely are, because light that is not wasted is energy that is saved typically. So I think that gives us justification to keep this. And it's an option. It's not a mandatory, it's not a requirement. But for projects where that makes sense, for other reasons, there would be savings that are achieved here.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Tim?
Thank you. I respectfully withdraw my proposal. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Tim. We will go ahead and withdraw proposal 34 and skip on to proposal 35, Tim. So back to you for this one.
Thank you. Reviewing the language in R408.2.13, the roof and gutter de-icing, it has the language, and I put it in quotations, in lieu of, and that is not good code language because that definition just kind of gives you alternate. So I would propose just to strike that section. I'm also thinking that should be like a 20, like required lengths of 25 foot or less. Short sections, there was a couple of public comments based on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Kim, go for it.
So this credit was brought in as an option to help create awareness around smart controls for roof and gutter de-icing heat tape that otherwise frequently is left on 100% of the time year round when it's not needed, or is controlled in a way that is still using a lot of energy when there is no ice or snow to be melted. So it's optional, it's not required. The reason in lieu of is in there is because there's already code requirements for basic temperature and moisture controls in the code. So if we want to change the in lieu of language to something else, I'm totally in support of that, but that's the reason for why this proposal was brought forward, was as there's already code requirements. We'd like to incentivize an option through points and credits that help encourage energy reduction of up to 90% or more for these types of very energy intensive systems. There's a lot of support and evidence out there of how much energy reduction this can create. There's a lot of support from power companies and the Department of Energy because this is one of those unmanaged loads that's left on the grid that is creating a lot of challenges. And I'll just stop there with that and see if anybody has questions.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, Carolyn, I see your hand, so jump in.
Yeah, quick question for Kim. Is this section in conflict then with the 403.9, whatever that earlier section was? Is that the point, is that you can't meet both? Or are these additive?
They're essentially written very differently. So what's written as a requirement in the code is to install a temperature or moisture sensor, whereas this is a credit to install a smart sensor, which is a video control type of sensor.
So Carolyn, I would argue that if you comply with this credit, you are doing way more than what the base code would require you. You're putting in a system that's much more effective than what the base code would require you to do. And that's why it says in lieu of, because like you don't, I think, Kim, you would agree that you don't necessarily need the simple system and the complex system because the complex system already will be better than the simple one.
Yeah, so I was just trying to understand, to Tim's point, how to address the in lieu of language. I agree with Kim. I want to keep this credit. I was trying to think about if the in lieu of is necessary language, or if we just leave the credit as is.
To be clear, the credit language already includes the words in lieu of. So
No,
if we
I
don't
know.
want, if we don't want those words,
just leave those, delete in lieu of requirements of that section. Just everything else retains in the credit. No, you muted.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, so you would start with an advanced location specific control.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tim, does that make you feel any better?
I respectfully withdraw my proposal. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. All right, so we will keep this language as is. We'll continue on through our proposals. Dan, I've got you as the next one for proposal 38, and I can move to the code language slide as you start.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, in this section, the last sentence for additional energy efficiency credit requirements for additions, the word permitted is used twice, and I believe it's used differently in both instances. So I was just trying to suggest that we clarify that language and put so let me just read what it actually says, which is alterations to existing buildings that are not part of the addition but are permitted with an addition shall be permitted to be used to achieve this requirement. And so my language is just simply to say alterations to existing buildings that are not part of the addition but are part of the building permit for the addition shall be allowed to be used to achieve this requirement.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Questions or comments for Dan? Okay. To my slow count of 5, I didn't see any hands raised, so I think that means we can move us along to the poll. So board members, would you like to modify our 502.2.5 as proposed? Option A is yes, option B is no, option C is abstain. Board members in support voting option A, please raise your hand. Keep your hands up, please. All right, I saw 14 hands for option A. You guys can lower your hands. Thank you. Board members voting for option B, please raise your hand. Okay, I have 0 votes for option B, and board members wishing to abstain, please raise your hand. All right, I have 0 abstentions. Thank you, Dan. This proposal passes. All right, Tim, we are back to the R503 proposal, so I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. This is, I think, a similar kind of discussion a little bit back from the electric ready, but this is now in the base code. And if you could scroll down, maybe next slide, please. And so I believe I was the one that, I kind of forget, but to get that alterations, the language that was, I'm proposing to strike out, brought that in through a previous meeting. But this is the one where I feel is making the code more restrictive, which we legally, the board legally cannot do, because the original language, substantial improvements, although I think there might have been a good substantial agreement that that definition that's in the base definitions is kind of a weird deal, talking about the land value, et cetera. And so my suggestion or my proposal is to take it back to that. And then it's certainly not going to apply to a lot, but at least in my opinion, we'll keep it in line with the allowance to not be able to make it more restrictive. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Questions or comments from the board?
Hang on a half a second. I just want to go look at this section really quick.
Yeah, take your time. Kim, I see your hand. You can start.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if anybody, if there are any issues or problems or if it really changes much with this proposal. Sorry, I'm not very clarifying my question, but I guess I'm just asking for a little bit more clarity. If there would be any negative impacts from implementing this proposal, if anybody knows.
So I guess just to be really clear, this is restoring the language back to the 2024 IECC wording. I think, Tim, not to put words in your mouth, but the concern that Tim is trying to address here is that by changing it to alterations where the work area is 50% or more of the gross floor area, you're capturing a lot more alterations than with the substantial improvements, because you're basing it on floor area and not based on value. And so I believe Tim's concern that he's raising is that because you're capturing more alterations than we would have, that's a strengthening of the base code of the IECC. Tim, did I get that right?
Absolutely. Okay. And then when a jurisdiction adopts, after this has been published, a jurisdiction can make this change that I'm proposing to strike out, because the jurisdiction can make it more restrictive. But we got our hands tied, so to speak, on the board. So, I mean, when I take this to my council, I will make that change, but I'll be able to do that at that point.
Thanks, Tim. Carolyn?
Yeah, I think it actually made it less restrictive. So if I recall our discussion, when we talk about assessed value, the issue is that every alteration, like, or property values are so high, like, but we trying to resolve this issue of inconsistency across the state in terms of project value, property value. So we were trying to create a provision that was not punitive based on where you are within the state.
Yeah, I think, Carolyn, I think the challenge becomes of where you're talking about. Could this be more restrictive in any jurisdiction? And I think the answer is absolutely it could, because the odds of like an alteration on a $10 million house reaching $5 million is probably fairly low, even if it hit 50% or more of the floor area. Conversely, talking about like a 1,000 square foot house, right? So like, I would agree with you that I think that the language as we had modified it is more fair. I think the question is not, is it more fair? Is it more stringent? Could it force someone to do something that they wouldn't have otherwise had to do? And I think there is a possibility that it could.
Thanks, Adam. Okay. Any other board thoughts, questions, comments here? Okay. Seeing none, we can advance to our straw poll. So would the board like to modify section R40, excuse me.
Clarifying question. Do we
Oh,
have the
please.
same provision in the C section?
No, this commercial section was left at the original IECC language. So this would be
Okay.
accepting this proposal would make it align with C commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. Good question. Yeah, Tim?
Yeah, just, that's a great question, Carolyn. I was going to propose that in the commercial section, but after seeing this, I didn't go forward with that part. I don't know if I had it in there and I withdrew it. I don't remember that, but, because I thought it was going to be getting that to match this, but now I'm getting this to match that. If that makes sense.
Yep. Thanks, Tim. Okay. So straw poll, would the board like to modify section R503.1.5? Option A is yes in support, option B is no against, and option C is abstain. Board members voting option A, please raise your hand. Okay, I've got 11 hands for option A. Thank you, guys. You can lower your hands. Board members voting for option B, please raise your hand. Okay, I've got 0 votes for option B. And board members wishing to abstain, please raise your hand. All right, I have 3 abstentions. Thank you, guys. You can lower your hands. So this proposal passes the simple majority, so we will advance with this. Thank you, Tim.
Kim, can I just ask a quick
Oh yeah,
question or
sorry, Kim, I wasn't sure if
request?
that was a lingering hand.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I was just wondering, I know when the previous code was sent out that Lotus also had a explanatory code that had some context around some of the conversations. Can this item be included in there to kind of flag it for local jurisdictions if they would like to amend? And it also would provide them that language for them to use.
Adam, I'll look to you on that, but that seems okay on from my standpoint.
Yeah, I think we can certainly figure out a way to make this known to folks. I think, Kim, we might have to be careful about whether it's not like we're making it sound like it's a recommendation versus just something for folks to be aware of. We might have to be careful with that. So, but point taken, we can evaluate how to at least raise this issue for folks.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Kim. Okay, so we will jump now to our final commercial proposals. There are just 3 in this section, so thinking we can get through them all. Tim, the first one is to you for C for 2.6.3.
Yeah, thank you. Could you scroll to the next slide? I think where that language is. There we go. We had a discussion back and forth when one of the last whichever meetings about this, and I still, from an enforceability standpoint, going to find that the timing that's in the language, in particular at the time of rough framing and insulation inspection, is just not enforceable. I routinely have projects, both large and small, that go through partials on the exterior wall, insulation, weather-resistant barrier, that whole project, our process, in order to keep the project going. I just had an E&T bank that's 6,000 square feet, and we went out and did exterior framing and sheathing inspections. I think he had us like 5 different times out there. So this would be, trying to require these inspections reports 5 or 6 different times. So I think just going backwards and just do it at the end. And then I think if you also scroll down, that might have been.
I think this is all I've got on the slide, Tim, but I'm happy to pull up the.
And then maybe scroll, okay, never mind. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. And yeah, if anyone wants to see the full code, I'm happy to, I've got the draft code pulled up. I can navigate to this section. But Elizabeth, what do you?
Yeah, I don't really even like this 10,000 to 50,000 square foot exception. Honestly, I think it's weird. And I do agree that the inspection requirements can surprise contractors, and those things do get missed, but I also think they're really important. The alternative that a project has to these inspections and stuff are to test. So I think they should either have those inspections or they should test. They do have that alternative to do the testing. That's how we advise our clients. We advise our clients not to use this exception because of the, difficulty in documenting everything, but just want to let everybody know there is an alternative, and the alternative is to actually test. Thanks.
Thanks, Elizabeth. All right. Any other board comments or questions? Yeah, Ron.
Yeah, I'll just second that. I really think it's important to encourage actual testing for this stuff. I think it's just works much, much better.
Thanks, Ron. All right. Seeing no other hands up, I think we can jump to the poll. Oh, Kim.
Sorry, late hand, just because I was just noticing the air leakage agency conversation and just wanting to make sure that we're being consistent with what we selected in our last meeting related to the residential requirements.
I think this is one of the ones where it was flagged and we're catching it. It's going to be consistent with the others. You mean in residential versus in commercial? Because we had definitely caught it in the commercial sections, which is what this is.
I'm saying I think when, in our last meeting, we discussed it at residential, but we would want it to be consistent within the commercial code, correct?
I think last week those were commercial sections we were talking about it.
Oh, were they?
In regards to, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so as long as consistency is met, that was just what I was noticing.
Yep. Yeah, this proposal came in before those changes will be made, but they will be made to this section.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks, Kim. Okay. Moving us on to the straw poll, would the board like to modify section C402.6.2.3, item number 2 as proposed? Option A is yes, option B is no, and option C is abstain. Board members in favor of option A, please raise your hand. All right, I have 9 hands raised in support of option A. Thank you, guys. You can lower your hands. Board members wishing to vote for option B, please raise your hand. All right, I have 3 hands for option B. Thanks, guys. You can lower your hands. Any board members wishing to abstain, please raise your hand. All right, and that is 2 abstentions. So 9 votes for yes in support, 3 for no against, and 2 abstentions. So that passes the simple majority. Thank you, Tim. And the next proposal is one from both Tim and Dan. So Tim, maybe I'll pass it to you, and then Dan to add any additional color. And I will move to that code language section for your pitch.
Thank you. I think it is important to keep the language in this section, number 1, to match. The primary reason is to match the International Pool Code, SPA code.
Thank you, Tim. Dan, anything to add?
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know of any type of, I'm curious what kind of reduction you would actually have in energy use with a pool cover inside of a building, especially if it's conditioned.
All right, thanks, Dan. Kim, we'll start with you for board questions and comments.
We had extensive conversation related to this topic before. related to energy lost, moisture lost, that moisture loss within buildings that then creates increased energy use by the HVAC equipment because there's more moisture in the air because the covers aren't being applied. I just kind of wanted to bring that topic or that part of the conversation back up for board members to consider because there's definitely energy and moisture loss related to uncovered pools, regardless of whether they are inside or outside. And I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thanks, Kim. I'm realizing I apologize, everybody. I don't think I did strike through on this change, so I'm happy to pull up the original language if anyone wants to see that side by side. Apologies for that oversight.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Will do.
I think the main difference was just that the words outdoor were struck, but we can verify that.
I think you're right, but I do just want to verify. Oh man, come on. Sorry, everybody. Just trying to get my computer to cooperate. We go ahead and look for. Okay.
Tom, go ahead while she's looking that up.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Kim was saying about the HVAC loads. And on the pool boilers themselves, even if the air temperature is the same temperature as the water, you still have the latent component, which is pretty significant. So I do still think they make sense on an indoor pool.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, I'm sticking with our original decision as well.
Okay. Thanks, Carolyn. Give everyone a moment to see those side by side. Apologies again.
Also just noting that in accordance with section 104.9.1, I'm pretty sure that's from the pool code, so that would not be relevant here. So that's the only other text difference here.
Okay. Any other board questions or comments seeing both of these language options side by side? Okay. I am seeing no hands. So with that, I'm going to jump us to the straw poll for proposals 8 and 9. Would the board like to change the covers section to align with the International Pool and Spa Code, which is that language you saw on the screen? Option A is yes, option B is no, and option C is abstain. Board members in favor of option A in support of this proposal, please raise your hand. Okay. I've got 6. Okay. Slowly trickling in. Keep your hands up if you're voting one way or the other, please. All right. I've got 7 votes for option A. Thank you, guys. You can lower your hands. Board members voting for option B, please raise your hand. All right. I've got 7 votes for option B. You guys can lower your hands. Thank you. And any board members wishing to abstain, please raise your hand. Right, I have 0 abstentions. So that is a straight majority. 7 votes for option A, 7 votes for, or excuse me, not majority. Straight tie. 7 votes for option A, 7 votes for option B. So that proposal does not pass. Okay, thanks everybody. I think this is our last commercial proposal. So Dan, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kim. Just trying to create some consistency. I noticed in C 410.3.2.1, the language of that's shown as struck out is actually in the next section for greater than 10,000. That was actually put as an exception. And I thought we should just have consistency. I realize my exception only says group hour occupancies. I'm not quite sure why I didn't include all of it, but basically taking all that and putting it in the exception, just like in C 410.3.2.2.
Thanks, Dan. would be helpful if I made that change on this slide, or can we? Adam, should I go?
So Dan, I'm not 100% sure I'm understanding, because the exception here, so the commercial buildings less than 10,000 square feet, this is where you want group R occupancies of any R2, R3, and R4, 4 stories or greater, to comply with these requirements. So I think having it as an exception would undo that, right? I'm not sure I'm understanding.
Yeah, I guess, let's see. So
Because 3.2.2, I think, is where the exception needs to be in what you're arguing, because that's the provision that applies to the commercial buildings over 10,000 square feet. Because the intent is that commercial buildings under 10,000 square feet and our occupancies are being treated the same for electric readiness. And then the commercial buildings over 10,000 feet are a separate category. And so I think for Kim, can you pull up the C410.3.2.2 language just so that we can make sure that I'm saying
Yeah,
that
Adam,
correctly?
your recollection is correct. It was intentional.
Yeah. Yeah. To treat small commercial and multifamily residential the same from an electric readiness perspective. I just want to verify what the language in our draft says to make sure we didn't accidentally flip those by inadvertently. So commercial buildings less than 10,000 square feet
Right.
and all our occupancies is what that first category was.
Yep.
Yep. And then, it's a little ways down because we added a lot of language there.
Sorry.
Point 2.2 has the exception. And so just making sure, Dan, that we're clear that the exception applies in 3.2.2 intentionally. And we're accepting all the things that are from this section that are covered under the previous section.
Okay, yeah, I had missed that the first time around, so I think I'd just like to withdraw that.
Okay, thanks, Dan. That sounds good to me. Alrighty. So we have about 5 minutes left. The final proposals were two related to definitions. Tim and Kim, I know you all said that you were okay if we didn't get to these, and I might ask if you are both willing to skip these for today. I don't know that we'll have time to properly discuss them both, but happy to try if you guys really want. So maybe Tim and Kim, what are you thinking here?
Yeah, I'm good.
Thanks, Tim.
I'm okay with it. I just was bringing them forth because they were public comments out there. And so if anybody else noticed that and thought that these would be beneficial, that's why I was bringing them forward.
I also just want to note that Hope had some concerns about how these proposals that were submitted by the public were written, and they were not code language, not definition language. So just noting too that there were some concerns raised from her about that.
If she was concerned about both of them, then I'm happy withdrawing them.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay, thank you, Tim, and thank you, Kim. I hate to ask, but I appreciate you all withdrawing just in the sake of us making sure we have some time to wrap up. So thank you guys for working through all of that today, for the really great discussion. I appreciate you all coming prepared for the conversation and having the productive discussions as a board. So our next steps, Adam is working very hard to make sure all of the changes that you all voted on from meeting 27 and we'll be working hard to make sure those changes from today's meeting get incorporated into the final draft of the low energy and carbon code that we will be voting on starting next week. Our goal is to get you the final draft by tomorrow, by end of day tomorrow. So you all have one full week to review the final draft before we do our voting meetings. I just wanted to name that the color differences that you all saw with the changes that were made in draft 1 that were blue and the changes that were made in draft 2, which were green, will all be the same color in the draft that you all received, just for ease of reading and making sure you all can take it all in. Next week, we will start our voting meetings. So we have 2 hours on Tuesday, May 27th, and 2 hours on Friday, May 30th. It is Memorial Day this weekend, so please, please, please remember that. And if you don't want to read code language over Memorial Day weekend, try to squeeze it in this week if possible. we are going to meet with Adam and discuss and finalize our voting protocols. So Ron, per your note earlier in the meeting, we'll talk through that and see what might be possible. But we'll send out all the information about how we will be voting and what that will look like to you guys on Tuesday, so tomorrow. And then, of course, we'll send the notes and materials from today's meeting, which we will approve at the start of meeting 29.
And
We have...
Kim, just
Oh, yeah.
noting on the voting really quick, just for the public as well, since I know that there have been some concerns about voting raised, we will also preview for the public on Tuesday, the 27th, what that voting process is, both for the board to remind everybody about exactly what we're doing, but also so the public is aware of exactly what they can expect from voting.
Thanks, Adam. Yes. All right, so we have 2 minutes left. If anyone has any questions about voting or what's coming next week, happy to answer those. Otherwise, I will say happy Monday. Have a great week, everybody, and enjoy your Memorial Day weekends. We'll be in touch this week.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Excellent.